All right. Welcome back to Learning, Growing, and Evolving. I am Marcello, and we are here to really heal those things that hold us back from living a higher quality life. And today I am joined by Hunter LaFave, who is a guru on all things breath. He has his own retreats, as well as It's in Your Head, which is an organization that is just really trying to help heal us mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally so that we can have a higher quality life. Recently, we've been talking about breathing and how it is in relation to cognitive behavioral therapy so that we're not caught up in this autopilot and all these old outdated habits and core beliefs, but rather we are creating new ways of living life that work for us. So, Hunt, please feel free to introduce yourself and, anything that's coming to mind for you right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, yeah, as Marcello said, I'm Hunter LaFave. I've been teaching breathwork for a few years now. I've been taking people up through the Himalayas in Nepal hiking, where we incorporate breathwork, meditation, and yoga to really just enhance that experience. We think of it as more of like a conscious hike. To just be aware of your surroundings, because it's easy to get kind of lost in the beauty of it and forget where you are, to kind of like recenter yourself and also to acclimate to altitude. And then I've been back in my hometown recently, teaching breathwork in a small little town in Illinois, which has been incredible.
Right. And you just also led a small retreat, a nice weekend break so that people can dial back and not get so caught up in all the things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's not a common practice here to have much self-care. Yoga is just kind of emerging in this area. I mean, there's a couple studios in a town that's maybe 30, 40 minutes from here, but not a lot available around here. So much less breathing meditation, just a lot of awareness of self.
Yeah. Remind me exactly where you are.
I'm in Danville, Illinois right now. This is my hometown.
Illinois. Sweet. Yeah. So also fun side story is when I was traveling through Indonesia, Hunter also was living in Bali, Indonesia. And we happened to be at the same party, never crossed actual paths at that party, but we just came into contact with each other through this beautiful network that I think we both created, which again, having the support system of other people who are like-minded and who are also driven to have the best lives for themselves. It's awesome. So Hunt and I don't know each other extraordinarily well, but we have been keeping in touch, and we
had an instant connection, and definitely a connection with what we want to achieve and the message that we want to spread. And it was very, very fluid the first time we got to really sit and chat.
100%. Yeah. So that's really where I want to kick this off, is to give people an idea of like where to start relating with you, because Hunter, of a lot of people that I have met and a lot of people that I know are involved in breathwork, has quite an extraordinary story, from diving to, different medical adversities that you had handled. Like, I don't want to give too much away, but feel free in any way to kind of share where you came from in terms of, kind of pre-awakening to during, and to how you got into breath work, how that's all tied into really your evolution.
Yeah. So, like I said, I grew up in this small town in Illinois. It's like farming, coal mining community. Real blue collar. So there wasn't a lot of taking care of yourself or expressing yourself as a man. It's just kind of be tough was always the thing.
Right.
And so I went after that. I got into welding in high school and just had a knack for it. Ended up hearing about underwater welding, decided that was pretty cool.
Most masculine, coolest thing.
The most badass thing I could get into at the time. And I kind of wanted to prove that to myself. So a couple of days after high school, I left and went out to Seattle. So I did commercial dive school. Then I worked in the oil field for 11 years. I was a commercial diver for 7, like an underwater welder. It's really just deep sea construction. So we inspect, replace, repair platforms
Like
and
oil
pipelines,
rigs and
anything.
whatnot.
Yeah, we'd come through if there was a hurricane, if the platform was damaged, we'd inspect it, put in support bracing or cut it out, remove it. If a pipeline blew, we would um, jet it out, like blow the mud out from around it because a lot of them are buried, and then go
Mhm.
and replace that piece.
So
Yeah.
you were introduced to breathing not quite in a
No.
healing way, but in a
Yeah.
very different way from an early age.
That was my beginning of awareness of breath. There you can hear your breathing so much, and especially once you get down deeper past 150 feet, you start breathing like a helium oxygen mixture. So that's a more expensive gas. It's something that you don't want to just be blowing through. So you have to be aware of how you're breathing when you get down that deep.
Wow. And remind me, just so I have an idea, you were doing that for 11 years. How old are you now again?
34? Yeah. I
34.
just turned 30, just turned 34. Yeah.
A young, good looking 34 though. Not an
Hey,
old
I'm still
34.
kicking. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Sweet. So, okay. So you did the
Yeah.
welding, you were introduced to breathing and
So yeah, so I was in the oil field for 11 years between diving, and then I was a deck foreman and worked in Singapore and in Brunei, Malaysia for a while. And then I started hitting some more hardships. A bunch of my friends from diving passed. I just had a lot of stuff that was kind of happening, and I ended up having a really bad panic attack, is what they thought it was, when I was in Brunei, and I got put in the hospital for a week, and things just started getting progressively worse after that. I just noticed I didn't have my same vigor. I was very drained. I started getting socially anxious, and I'm not an anxious person, definitely not socially ever before.
right.
um yeah, I just wasn't myself. I didn't know what was going on. You know, it was clearly depression, but I had no idea where that was coming from.
This
And
is your first
then not
experience with it at the time, yeah?
Yeah, and like I said, from my background, it's not something that men really communicate their thoughts and feelings and emotions. And if
Right.
you're feeling weak or drained or whatever, it's suck it up, get tougher, do whatever. You got to get through it. But there was no real outlet for what I was going through. I didn't even know how to express it.
Right.
Um, I started getting into therapy around then, and they got me on a bunch of different prescriptions and all this stuff, and still felt just as terrible, but numb a little bit, just
Yeah.
not really there. That kind of disconnected from everything. And then shortly after that, I got diagnosed with late stage cancer. So I had stage 3 colorectal cancer.
Hmm.
And that's when I guess shit really hit the fan. um, Everything kind of fell out. At that point, I was done working. I couldn't go back to work. My brain function got really bad after I started treatment. I had probably
Hmm.
the most difficulty with my brain. My body handled it well for the amount of treatment that I did, but my
Right.
brain really suffered. So it was
Right.
hard even to figure out how to make breakfast in the morning. I'd have to go through this process of how to dress myself, of looking at oatmeal and looking at a pan and start crying because I couldn't figure out how to turn that into food. Um,
And this is during your treatments, you're saying?
this is
Yeah.
yeah, so this is
Yeah.
during treatment. Once I started chemo and radiation, so at the beginning, the treatment plan was to do 28 rounds of chemo and radiation, doing it
Hmm.
5 days a week, chemo in the morning, chemo at night, and
Yeah.
then I'd meet in the afternoon, and they do radiation. Um, and
Your body
so
was
around
holding
that
on to
time,
so much. Yeah.
yeah, and then on top of that, it was already going into a body that was pretty beat up from really 11 years of abuse in the oil field. I mean, I worked as a farmhand kind of before that, baling hay, and so
Hmm.
my body had been taking a beating for a while. I drank a lot of, yeah, just not really taking good care of myself, my food, diet,
Right.
mental health. My diet in general, so not just what I ate, but what I was surrounding myself, what I was allowing to get into my mind. All of that was all pretty unhealthy.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Right. You're going
yeah.
with essentially like the status quo of
Mm.
what it was supposed to, what a man was supposed to be doing, the type of actions, being
Yeah.
masculine, not dealing with the
Hmm.
depression or the anxiety.
Yeah. If you're sad, go drinking. If you're tired,
Yeah.
get Adderall. If you can't
Yeah.
sleep, have whiskey, that kind of thing. If
Yeah.
your body
Yeah.
hurts, don't stretch it, take pain pills, all those kind of
Right.
things. So yeah, I
Right.
did it.
And for a
to
lot
the
of people, I
extreme.
mean, like most people don't like the tools that you and I both know now is not easily accessible to people, especially like 5, 10 years ago. It's like people
Mm.
just didn't have knowledge of these things or much exposure to them in the first place. So like that's why I think it's incredible that, you know, you're expressing these tools now and making them just incredibly apparent so that people, if they are there, can use them. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's my group or whatever my message, my point here is to connect to people that were like me. You know, it's
Yeah.
especially for men, it's really really hard sometimes to get into this, and it's not as um, connected with them. It's not something that
Right.
you see. You know, you go to any yoga class anywhere, you could look at between men and women who are in there.
Right.
It's 90-95% women all the time.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So I'm curious here. So you're in the treatment phase. You're having a lot of trouble with cognition, being able to just like go through normal experiences of life. At what point did breath work start to enter from a healing capacity, like in that way, rather
Yeah.
than just, yeah.
So I had tried to get into meditation before that. When I started feeling really really depressed, I
Yeah.
tried meditation and just ended up feeling very stressed because I became aware of how noisy it was inside of my head. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was just normal that, you know, my thoughts and feelings and emotions are the real world and this is what's really going on. It wasn't until yeah, I started meditating and got some awareness of what was going on there and realized how little control I had of it. So I had a
Right.
lot of free time during treatment. I watched a lot of YouTube videos and laid around. And um, one of the things that I found was the Vice documentary about Wim Hof. And
That's a great documentary for anybody who's
yeah, the
interested
Iceman.
in breath work. Yeah, Wim Hof has I think it's like 27 minutes or 45 minutes, like
Short. Yeah,
so
not
good.
not too long. Yeah,
I'll
right
put a
to the
link
point.
down below so that everybody could check that out.
Yeah, it's an amazing one. And I had heard about it, and really the whole focus was the ice, getting in the ice, and then this deep breathing practice. Well, at the time, I had really bad neuropathy. So I couldn't even get anything from the fridge without feeling like I was electrocuted. I couldn't even
Explain
have,
to me what that is, neuropathy.
yeah. So it's nerve damage from the chemo. Basically, your
Okay.
nerves just
Okay.
get burnt out, for lack of better knowledge about it. But
Yeah.
so it starts typically in your fingertips. You'll start getting numbness there in other parts of your body. Your
Mhm.
hands just don't function the same. I noticed most of it in my hands, but my whole body just couldn't take cold. So you're naturally colder doing chemo. You know, I lost 40 something pounds, 50 pounds, I think,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
somewhere around there. Yeah, I was pretty skinny.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, I couldn't even get anything out of the fridge. It felt like I was getting electrocuted. If I went to go shopping, I'd have to wear gloves or a sweater. Um, I'd have to wear usually a hoodie because it would be so difficult with how slow my brain was. You know, you go look and there's 20 different types of peanut butter and try to figure out what's the best price and what's the healthiest. And I just sit there and start crying all the time. So I'd have to put my hoodie over my head and gather myself to get peanut butter, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I didn't think too much about the Wim Hof because I was like, you know, maybe this is something I'll try once I get done, so I can, you know, go
Mhm.
get in the cold. And then I started hearing about it a little more often. I was in a group called the Hardwood Heroes, so we were
Mhm.
playing basketball, raising money for cancer with a bunch of other like young survivors. It's during the NCAA championships, the college basketball championships. And one of the guys there was telling me all about it and these benefits that he got from it. And I was like, well, I'll give it a try and just see if they're doing it. I guess it'd be good for me. And I remember the first time I tried it, I felt tingling in my hands and I felt quiet in my mind. And I couldn't remember a time when I felt that calm. And especially at that time, it was so chaotic and stressful and just insane. Um, yeah, to the point of where I left and went to Thailand before my first set of surgeries I done those first 28 rounds, and then I had like 6 weeks off. I was getting the ostomy bag.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up, yeah, all my surgeries, which ended up going kind of crazy. I ended up having a heart surgery and all kinds of mess with that. But um, yeah, so my life, it just felt like it was falling apart. I was like, I got to go calm down. I got to relax. And I did like a 2 week trip out to Thailand, went to this retreat called Swan Sadi,
Mm-hmm.
met my family out there. And yeah, at the time, like I had done maybe a yoga class or two. And I remember feeling really uncomfortable and like, yeah, it's just not for me kind of thing.
Right.
And I went out there and they just, yeah, embraced me and welcomed me in. And that really got me into a lot of the yoga and a deeper practice
Right.
there.
Right. Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's like my favorite part is when you start to come in together with other people who are doing the same stuff. Cause then you're like, I'm not crazy. I feel supported,
Yeah.
you know? So that's beautiful. I know you had told me a little bit about your time in Thailand coming, like into, just coming into the same kind of atmosphere as some people who then ended up changing the entire trajectory of your life.
Mm,
Had forgot the name of
absolutely.
the woman that you had mentioned to me, but yes, so that's a beautiful transition into breathing and then into
Mhm.
yoga. And the cool thing is that you already
Yeah.
had experience with traveling as well.
Yeah. So um, when I was there, I met Natasha. Natasha was an
Right.
instructor at Swan Sadi, and she's actually my partner now for Breath of Fresh Air retreats.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's how I
Yes.
met her through there. And then Will and Lisa that own Swan Sadi are my best friends. I just met up with them in Colorado. They came in from Austria, so I
Oh
got to see
wow.
them for a little bit. Yeah, it was amazing.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah,
Very,
yeah.
very nice. Yeah.
So yeah, I went out there, and that really got me on this path. It piqued
Yeah.
my awareness. I remember feeling this calm of when I came back there. I've been eating really, really healthy. They grow most of the food, on the property. They grow a lot of it on the property. They get a lot of
Right.
stuff locally sourced.
Right.
It's all vegan, just delicious. And so I remember when you have 7 days to really take care of yourself and you're in this area of really deep acceptance and support in this beautiful area. You're around nature and you're
Right.
doing hours of yoga every day. You're meditating every day. You've got this journal practice. You have, yeah, this support and love, this network feeling. I remember coming back like, I got this. I'm gonna run through this. I felt
Yeah.
so happy when I was there. I knew I was like, that was my motivation to get done with this. I was like, I have to beat this and get myself good so I can come back to Thailand. That was my motivating factor. You have to have
Yeah.
that one. It can't be just I want to survive. You would think that is enough of a reason for anyone that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't gone through it. They're like, oh, you want to live. It wasn't like that for me.
Yeah.
You have to have those small details, those goals, those whatever. If you've got
Right.
kids, you want to see your kids grow up. If you've got something that you want to accomplish, whatever it is, you have to have some kind of goals to get through that. And Thailand
Yeah.
was it for me.
The ignition, it's like the ignition of the spirit, essentially,
Mm.
because survival is not going to nourish the spirit quite like a loving relationship is. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you
because
got to
there's definitely
experience that.
times where you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's not that
Yeah.
you want to die, but you're like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, that's fine. I'm okay with not doing
Yeah.
this again. Especially when you feel kind of hopeless of, is this going to get better? Can I even beat this? Is my body going to be what kind of quality of life am I going to have after this?
Right.
So that connection to life becomes splintered.
Right.
So
Right.
Thailand was it for me, and they were very, very supportive and would reach out and send voice notes and all this that I would listen to when I was on chemo, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get back there. So
Right.
then that's when I got into Wim Hof a lot more. So when I came back, um, yeah, my practice deepened. I started doing it every day, and this is how I got into meditation as well. Because when you get done with this form of breath work, your mind feels very, very empty and clear.
Right.
So I would get a minute or two of silence in this world that was just chaotic and coming down on my head. Um, and then I could extend that, every time, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10
Right.
minutes, and that's where my practice started.
So
A lot more with meditation.
For anybody who doesn't know exactly what Wim Hof breathing is, it's typically done with like cold water exposure. So Wim Hof is known as the Iceman because he's like hiked part of Antarctica in just like a shirt and shorts. Or, I'm sorry, no shirt and just shorts. He has swam the longest distance underneath a block of ice in comparison to any other human. And
He's actually got lost. He actually got lost under the water one time by himself and couldn't find the hole out. And his corneas froze over. He was in there for so long. It was something like 6 minutes. He was under the ice, and
right.
Yeah.
Right. So just so people have something to like attach to, can you explain the actual breathing that's being done with Wim Hof and that you were experiencing at this time?
Yeah, so I do this, and I still do this every morning when I wake up before I eat breakfast, because you don't want that food on your diaphragm, and then also it kind of throws off your sympathetic parasympathetic systems by doing digestion and breath work at the same time. So basically, I'll get up. I either sit on the ground or lay down, but you want to be close to the ground, so that way, if you can get very lightheaded, you don't want to fall over and hit your head. So someplace safe. Yeah, it's very important. Really, all the injuries, accidents, anything that's happened with this has been because people have done it while they're driving, while they're in water, while they're walking around. So if you're down towards the ground, you're safe, you're good. And then so you do. He recommends about like 30 breaths deep through the mouth, deep into the diaphragm, filling up your belly, then your chest, releasing out. And it's just a circular breath. So you're not starting or stopping at the top or at the bottom, just this constant flow of air in and out. So when I started doing this, what I noticed immediately, I was like, I got feeling in my fingertips again. It was one of the first things you'll notice is this like vibrations through your fingertips, maybe across your nose, across your cheeks, across your forehead, sometimes across your lips.
Feeling.
Yeah, your hands will start cramping up. You start getting these claw hands and all this. And so that was the beginning. I could feel something going on in there. So you do this deep breathing. And what I do typically when I'm doing a self practice, instead of trying to count each time, because I don't want to be in my head a lot during it, is I'll set a 2-minute alarm. And for the pace that I breathe, that is around the area that I want to be in. And then once I hit 2 minutes, I can gauge how I'm feeling if I want to go further with it. Then you blow all the air out of your lungs, and then you hold for as long as you can with an empty lung. And this is really the most important part of it. So what you're doing is you're raising your oxygen levels, you're lowering your carbon dioxide level a lot. And then when you go into this breath hold, you're basically flip-flopping that. So the way they explain is you're making your body more flexible, so it doesn't break. So having these things switch back and forth. The way that we breathe, or we know to breathe, is not because of oxygen. Our brain can sense our oxygen level, but it's not something that we are cognizant of. We can't tell oxygen. We feel carbon dioxide in our body. So that urge to breathe is to tell you need to inhale so you can exhale. So when you do this deep breathing and all that carbon dioxide is very, very low, you have a longer period of time before you start getting that alarm that you need to breathe. So in that time, you can consume the oxygen that's in your body down to 50, 40, sometimes even 30% oxygen. And then when you can't stand that anymore, you'll take a big, deep, deliberate breath in, you hold and squeeze, and that way that fresh oxygen gets pushed around and gets put into all your muscles and fibers throughout your body. Hold that for about 15 seconds, blow it out, and then you start again on the next round. So you'll do at least 3 rounds each time.
Yeah. See, this is exactly why I need to do, I think, more podcast style, because I know a lot about this breathing, but the way that you just broke it down was like very helpful in understanding the actual mechanics of oxygen to carbon dioxide. And this creates just a beautiful byproduct of feeling extremely relaxed, extremely calm, because you're essentially flushing your entire body out of stagnant energy,
Yeah, your breath is actually where a lot of toxins are released. It's where we lose most of, if you're losing weight, it's actually through your breath. Your lungs are this cleansing body. It connects really every function within your body goes through your breathing habits.
Right, right. And it's like it's the one thing that you constantly have with you is your breath. It's like your connection to life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's number one. It's more important than eating food, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You can
One.
go, you can go a few days without water, a few weeks or months without food. You can go minutes without breath before it gets you.
Right.
And you just look at how
Exactly.
much space it takes up in very, very important real estate space. You think of in your skull and in your face, how important every single square inch of that is. And your
Yeah.
nasal cavity takes up a huge portion of that. Your throat,
Right.
your larynx, all of that takes up a lot. Your lungs, I mean, how much of that is your chest and inside your rib cage
Yeah.
of what, so
Massive percent. Yeah.
yeah, we're not made on accident. This is a very, very intelligent design here, and clearly breath is a very, very integral part of that system.
Right. 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 Yeah. 100%. So but I don't want to lose track of your
Yeah,
story
yeah.
too, because I want to hear that. But for those of you who did want to know what Wim Hof is, that's a really good explanation of it. And I will not only include the Vice documentary below, but I'll also include, he has a couple YouTube videos that I have done
Mm.
that have been wonderful. And then also at some point, you know, you can also grab Hunter's own instruction, and I'll include all his links below too, so that you can have more of this information explain just how he did it. But yeah, so continue to tell me. You were at the point where you had just come home from Thailand. You were feeling really nourished by the fact that you had community.
Mm.
You were diving back into your practice because you had this motivation to continue to
Mm.
expand because that spirit had been ignited.
Yeah. So I got back and then I had to have all my first set of surgeries.
Mhm.
So I ended up getting the ostomy bag, which, if you're not familiar, they cut a hole in your stomach and they basically pull your intestines out. They cut them in half, roll them back, and then they sew it to your belly. And that way, when you eat, your stool doesn't come out the back, it comes out the front.
Right.
So they had to resection my colon, take out all the area where all the tumors were,
Right.
reconnect that. And then to give that time to heal, especially after chemo, that area is so brittle and weak, it would basically just break apart if it was to be used right then. And you don't want to
Right.
pass toxic stool through basically an open wound inside of you
A
would not
hundred
be a
percent.
good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Infection.
I ended up having like a heart surgery when I was in there. My heart rate went to 240 beats a minute. All this stuff. There was a
This
lot
is
of
when you got when you got back from Thailand.
yeah. So this was
Yeah.
when I was doing all my surgeries. I got put in there, and yeah. So there was a lot of healing that needed to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and my body was pretty stressed at the time. So I kept up with the breath work, and this gave me this mental space. It gave me a little bit of range. It kept me calm. It allowed me to think more clearly and outside of the space that I was in. In
Mm-hmm.
this time, I began um, exercising
Mm-hmm.
differently. I'd always been fairly active, but it became my job now. This is what I have to do to stay alive. So I got into
Yeah.
running. I was running upwards of 3 or 4 miles a day. I got off of all prescription medications, and I was really just I was on mood stabilizers and antidepressants and all these different things that they had put me on, pain medicine, anti-inflammatories,
A whole
stuff for
assortment.
because
Yeah.
I was on, I think, 9 different prescriptions at one point, and I was taking 20, 30 pills a day, um,
Wow.
and
Wow.
having all these issues, and you're just pulled. You don't know what's affecting you at that time. Is it a medicine? Is it reacting with something else? I was like, I want to know it's just chemo. So I became much more conscious and aware of what was going inside my body. I think without Swansati and that time there, it would have just been like, yeah, let's take it, and this is going to make me feel better.
Right.
Um, and also with kind of my past life, I had uh, been pretty exploratory, I guess, with
Yeah.
pain medicine, things like that. It was something your body
And
gets beat up from diving, and it was the only thing that you could do. Um, that you could,
Yeah.
kind of get
It's like
away with.
reaching for whiskey to go to sleep.
Yeah. So when you don't
Same
know what
thing,
to
yeah.
do, anything that kind of takes that edge off, that pain away a little bit, feels like a good thing. So I was much more aware of my body and what was going on in it, and
Yeah.
definitely Thailand helped that. So this got into my deeper practice of breath work, meditation, exercising, watching my diet. My doctor, my oncologist, the first one I had, told me to have milkshakes. Was telling me like basically like TV dinners, like frozen dinners. Said sugar didn't matter. He's like, you can still drink some alcohol if you want. Meat, all that stuff doesn't affect it
Yeah.
at all. Clearly insane.
It's
That
insane. I
that's
mean, like, that's like, I wonder like how many people are aware of this. I know, like, I have my community of people who are like-minded, so that they know this, but most actual medical doctors have a very small percentage of their curriculum dedicated to nutrition and how nutrition affects the body.
and a
So
lot of that's at the beginning of their school too. So it's not something that is
yeah,
as apparent and aware. That's back knowledge, and then at the end of it, it's just prescriptions,
right,
taking pills.
right, exactly.
So
And
if
most
you're
of them aren't even aware themselves for their own, for their own personal benefit. Like, if I eat this, this will happen. If I eat that, then I'll feel better here. So it's incredible to me when I'm listening to you talk about this. It's incredible that you intuitively led yourself down this road, because it's, at some point in the road during, the pain, it's like this little piece of you just starts to kind of wake up and start to sprout like a seed that's just planted in the right soil. And it's like, what is it that, said, I'm going to go to Thailand? What is it that
yeah.
said, I'm going to start eating better, that I'm going to be more conscious? Like
Mm. So
that
there was
fascinates me.
this feeling of like I knew what he's saying is wrong, but
Right.
when you're sick and tired, and this is the specialist, this is the person that is their whole job in life has been dedicated to taking care of this thing, you start to second guess yourself, and maybe they know what they're talking about better than I do, and maybe this, maybe I really do just have to keep on a number, like a physical weight number that has something to do with it. But
Yeah.
deep down, I knew that is insane.
Your
So when
intuition,
I
you
got,
started to connect with your intuition.
yeah, and which was hard because my brain was slow. So it was really
Yeah.
foggy. And just like I said, even getting dressed or making oatmeal in the morning was a deep, deliberate, very difficult task to
Yeah.
do. So when I got done with that, the first 28 rounds, I was still stage 3. So there was still so many tumors within there that, basically I didn't get downgraded at all. So I had to do another 12 rounds where they put a port in my chest. So they pump the chemo through there directly into your heart. You do it from Wednesday till Friday every other week. And that kicked my ass. That was when it got hard because, you're mentally in it. I got a couple months of this. I'm gonna knock it out. It's gonna be done and good. And then to find out that did nothing, and you're back in it, and you've got another 8 months of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Just a roller coaster of like thinking you're going to be there, and then you have to settle back into it. And it's
you
like
got
back
this
and forth.
bag. I had so many issues with the bag of it not being able to seal and leak, and all the
And you're in
pain
your
and stuff
late
that comes from
20s
it.
while this is all happening.
I was 30. Yeah.
30.
I
Okay.
just turned,
Okay.
yeah, I got diagnosed right when I was 30. Yeah, from 30 till 31, I went through it.
Right. Right.
So yeah, all these things just started really coming down, and realized that I've got to change something. So at that moment, I was like, I'm done listening to these doctors on how I take care of it. They're there to give me chemo. That's all I'm doing with them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I started being much more aware of my diet. That's when I got off of all the pills and prescriptions. When I asked them at the beginning, I remember asking the doctor, like, what about holistic things? What about fasting and all this stuff? And he looked at me and goes, if you do that, you'll die. Said it in front of my whole family. Said that, yeah, if you go to take care of
With
yourself,
pure
if you
conviction.
yeah, eat ice cream, steaks, drink alcohol, do whatever, just lay around, don't do anything. If you exercise, if you do any of that, it's going to kill you. So yeah, I made this big change, and I started doing multiple day fasts. So when I would get hooked up for chemo on Wednesday, I would start fasting Tuesday afternoon, and then I wouldn't eat until after I got done with chemo. I was going to a Chinese medicine doctor and getting the acupuncture when I got done,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get my
I love
system,
acupuncture. Yeah.
yeah, communicating again and working, because you're sending in all these chemicals that are just killing that basically.
Right.
So you need
Right.
something to recharge that. Doing these fasts, being more aware of what I eat, being aware of stress and how that affects everything. So
Right.
removing myself from some situations, also noticing some habits and things that I had, where I was drawn to really hurting myself to get through some things.
Yeah.
But yeah, starting to get this awareness of drinking all the time isn't good. Being around people that have a really, really negative mindset and all this is not good. Being places where I don't feel supported is not good for me. So I had to break it down to this, everything that I did, because I couldn't really trust my decision making. Is this something that's really, really good for me, or is this an old habit
Mm-hmm.
that's wanting to come out, or some kind of fear that I have? So everything that I did, I'd have to make this mental checklist of, is this good for me? Is it in line with my morals? Can I afford this? When I did this before, how did I feel? Am I doing this because I feel obligated to do it? Or am I
Right.
doing this because I really, really want to do it? And if any of those were a negative response, that was it. I'd get out of it. If it was positive, I would go and do it, try to be in the moment. And when I get done, I would do, in the oil field, we call it like an after action report. So you have your pre-job planning, your risk report, all that, do your job. And then afterwards you do kind of like a check-in and see how you can improve on it. And my
Yeah.
brain knew that very well from 11 years in the oil field. This is how we do every single project. So I just kind of reverted back to that. And then my little after action review, I would look at it and go, I don't feel good. I'm stressed. This person made me feel, whatever it was.
Right.
Um, or that's really, really good. I need to do this more often. And
Right.
that's kind of how I'd figure things out. And, you do slip ups and go back and forth, and okay, let's just jot that down. This is a tendency that I have at these moments to do these things.
Right.
Um,
And that serves a huge role too, because I mean, like, it sounds obvious, like, oh yeah, reflection's a good thing, but like my own personal experience, like when I was moving past anxiety, like in the first couple of years of it, when I had no tools, I didn't know exactly what I was experiencing or why I was experiencing it, and I got to that point where I started to question everything, because that's
yeah,
what you did. You got to the point where you're like, your back's up
I don't
against
know
the
if
wall, you have
anything is
no
good for me or not.
choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you start to question everything. And then once you take those actions, the reflection piece, at least for me, was extremely important, because of the fact that it had me begin to train that part of my brain where I was recognizing the pieces that I was doing for myself. So I was building my own self confidence around my physical health, knowing that when I choose to eat this, I'm like practicing self
Mm.
love,
Yeah.
and continuously being aware and reflecting on what was good for me. And that just elevated the habit of choosing myself before choosing something else. And that's what you did.
Yeah, so I became this I became aware of this connection with myself. I became aware of this relationship that I have with myself, and then I need to nourish this and take care of this. Where before it was just like, get through it, push it through it, whatever, you'll make it, things will be fine. Now I realize, oh, I gotta take care of this as if it was
Yeah.
a relationship with someone else. You have to put effort into it. You have to listen to things. You have to communicate with yourself and realize what's working and what's not. So
Yeah.
this was the big turning point for me. All the while I'm doing the breath work every morning. It's given me this space, and when I feel that calm, I become more aware of what is chaotic. So I would have friends
Mm-hmm.
come over to my house, or people, and when they would walk in, like, you have to leave. I can't. Your whole energy when you walked in this room, and that was something I would have never said
Wow.
before. Like, I
Yeah.
just, the way you walked in this room took air out of my lungs, and you can't be around me right now. And so you
Yeah.
have to choose yourself over everything else. You have to really not give a fuck what anyone else thinks when it comes down to your life. You have to be that guarded and protective
Yeah.
about yourself. And when you've got such little energy, not just how awake you are, but your energy that's moving through your body, when that is so low, you really, really got to cultivate and keep that. strong to get through these things. So now I'm going through these last 12 rounds. I start doing this fasting. I get into all these things, and the doctors would laugh at me. The nurses would laugh at me. They tell me it's going to kill me, that, you know, they would bring donuts in when you're hooked up to chemo. So you're giving them bleached flour, you know, deep fried, covered in sugar. I can't imagine if they packed it with a cigarette and a steak. I couldn't think of anything that would be more cancer causing than
Right.
that. And
Right.
they're like, oh, it's going to be good for your mood and all that. I'm like, I'm done with all this. Yeah, just give me
Yeah.
the chemo and I'll get on out of here. Another thing with the breathwork is your body releases fresh red blood cells when you do
Hmm.
this deep breathing practice. So my markers started getting better as time went on. I started getting stronger,
Hmm.
and you know, they just chalked this up to, oh, you're young and all this. They wanted no credit to be given to the diet, exercise, mental, emotional changes I had had. Nothing.
Right.
It was just a freak accident, and I have a lucky body. So I was sitting in this room, and you go in on Wednesdays or Fridays to get disconnected. You know, Wednesdays you're there a lot longer. They have to do blood work and all this, and you're looking around, and you might see 100 people coming in and out. They all look like they're dying. Everyone looks sick and weak and horrible and all this. And I've got a tan. I ran a couple miles before I came in here, and I'm relatively good for what it is. You know,
Yeah.
I look, you know, me compared to me looks
Cons-
awful, but me compared to this room, I'm, yeah,
yeah.
a super athlete.
Yeah. And I'm sure at some point in time there were other people in there. Like if you were to reconnect with any of the people that, you know, you were doing this alongside, I can guarantee you were a pillar of light, at least as an example of, wow, like he looks considerably better than I do. I wonder what it is he's practicing in comparison to me.
Well, people would ask, and I would begin to tell them, and the nurses would come over like, you're upsetting everybody. Don't, you know, you're stressing them out and all that. I'm like, no, you're doing that. You shouldn't be giving them donuts and all this. I'd be telling people like, well, why aren't you eating that? Other people would ask me. I'm like, oh, well, you know, this is why, because of what it does, and sugar causes cancer to flare up and all this. And like, shh, you're gonna upset them. I'm like, it's not me doing it. Yeah, they need to know
It's
this
just
stuff.
so it's so backwards. Like I can have an entirely other conversation just
Yeah,
on how
that's a, yeah,
backwards that situation is.
yeah, that's a,
Yeah.
a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that after that, the breathwork became this daily practice, and this was my way
Yeah.
to reconnect and strengthen myself. And then when I got done with treatment, I started seeing this big progression with it and this
Hmm.
momentum building. About 3 months after I got done with treatment, I got a one way out to Thailand. I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. Luckily, Will and Lisa let me stay at Swansadi and gave me a place to heal, and this loving network and amazing food, and just kind of let me do my thing. They
Hmm.
promoted me to start um, telling my story, to write it down, to release these emotions a little bit. And that's when I began writing, which ultimately turned into It's in Your Head. So all these mental and emotional things that are never talked about. It's always the physical body when you go there. It's take these pills, do this, rest, all that. But
Yeah.
it's not express yourself, you know, talk about what
Right.
you're feeling, go, you know, get these things out, make sure that you're feeling good on the inside and in your head too.
Right.
um and that the name of that actually came from a Fiona Apple song. She's my favorite. It said, he said, it's all in your head. I said, so is everything, but he didn't get it. So originally I wanted to call it So Is Everything, but I figured it's maybe a little bit, you know, not
Gotcha.
too on the head. It's in your head,
I
just nailed it. So
Yeah, I don't even know who that artist is. I got to check that artist out.
yeah, she's amazing.
Fiona Apple.
Fiona Apple. Yeah, she's my
Okay.
favorite.
All right.
Um, so yeah, so that was uh, where the process started, and I was doing my breath work there when I got back. So this place that had basically a two-story building. There's no sidewalls around it.
Hmm.
It's just this hardwood floor. You're kind of up in the trees. You're in the jungle. So you get up at 6:30 in the morning. You're doing yoga till after the sun comes up. You kind of wake up with the birds. It's a silent morning. You get this break, and then you like a 10-minute break, and you come down for breakfast, and you don't speak until after you leave the breakfast table. So I'm upstairs breathing in this shala, and the sound travels down really low. It sounded like I was playing around with myself, is what it sounded like up there.
Yeah.
So they came up, they're like, what are you doing up here? Because I'm just heavy breathing and like kind of rocking back and forth as I'm doing this. And yeah, I told him, I was like, I'm doing this breath work. It helps me. And um, yeah, I think I ran them through it. And they're like, could you teach a class? I'm like, yeah, I can share what I know. And that's kind of how it started. So I started teaching breath work
Yeah.
there, and then it just took off to, I thought it was one thing where it's like this affected me because I was in such need for it and all that, but I don't know what this
Helps
really
everybody.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to see when you got a class of 30, 35 people, and there's people that are crying, sobbing, shaking, getting up, and their eyes
Yeah.
are just like, what the fuck just happened?
Right.
That calm and peacefulness that you feel afterwards, that connection with your body and self, that emotional release. And it's not even anger, sadness, anything. You don't really feel anything, but you just sob and shake and get
Right.
whatever is stored inside of you that needs to come out happen.
Yeah.
And I was like,
That cathartic experience. Yeah.
yeah, like
You're
there's
allowing
something
your
really,
body.
really, yeah, there's something really, really powerful here. And this is, yeah, this is now my mission, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And then
And so
as I, go ahead.
yeah, so all this while though, the breathing that you were doing in the shala was all the Wim Hof style of breathing, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. So that was my introduction to it.
Okay.
Was Wim Hof. That was my main form there. And
Okay.
then as
Okay.
times got on, I've got into other types of pranayama. I've done
Hmm.
rebirths, like the shamanic breath work.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of different practices, and there's something for everything. It feels like.
Yeah. 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 For sure. For sure. So I'm trying to think to myself, should we go straight into the
Yeah.
practice or do we keep, because I would love to keep talking to you for, I like long form conversations. So 2-3 hours is like where I'd love to be, but
Yeah.
for the interest of my camera battery and whatnot, uh,
Yeah.
I would love to first off hear like how you ended up just like fully launching and where you kind of start to like really leave everything else behind and move into this new version of
Mm.
Hunter, this not new but the one that was uncovered beneath all of the muck that was
Yeah,
originally
the
put
real
on.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the real one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief here, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I started teaching, doing all this. At the time I was still writing, doing all the basically I was just writing out my story. So I would go like this happened and then this happened and this. I'm just trying to release these things, realize that there is some kind of there's lessons here that need to be told.
Right.
So I started putting those into categories, and then I wrote a lot of things for It's in Your Head. I started doing basically it was like cancer coaching. So I would speak with cancer patients, and more importantly sometimes their caretakers, because
Right.
they're your connection to the world. They're everything to you there. So how to communicate, how to ask for help, how to help this person in need, things to look out for, a little bit of diet advice, but it was a lot of like mental training.
Right.
And over time that became really, really heavy for me to stay in that space and to speak with authenticity. I really had to mentally and emotionally put myself there, and I realized that was not a safe space for me to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
still I'm around if anyone needs to talk or wants to chat or needs advice and all that. I still do it. I just don't really promote that, and that's how Breath of Fresh Air started. Was how do I get people to not get here? Like I feel like I'm picking up the pieces on the back end. Well, how do we get people from getting sick in the first place, which was really the concept behind the Breath of Fresh Air retreats.
Mm-hmm.
Go out there and connect with nature, calm, relax, do your breathing, meditate, yoga to open up your body, everything to just be connected with self, with nature, um, and to come back feeling stronger, energize your body so you can fight off illness, all these things. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how that process started there. And that's still what I'm kind of doing to today of
Right.
what I just did locally here, and
Yeah, like
incorporating
last week.
more techniques. Yeah, yeah, incorporating more of these like mental and emotional strengthening and connection
Yeah.
exercises. So a lot of journaling, a lot of self-expression, all that too, all coupled
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it really is, and it's so necessary right now because amongst all of the things that are happening around us, with just a lot of division, lots of things that aren't really serving our best mental or physical health,
Mm.
people like you introducing these tools to help bring in this new paradigm and to really, fuel this paradigm shift into taking care of our physical health, taking care of our mental health, how they are in relationship to each other. Because we didn't even dive into how some of the traumas that you experienced or the catalysts for how you ended up maybe developing cancer and how your body was holding on to all this. You dived slightly into it when you said, your body goes through this catharsis and breathing and all this stuff that you were holding on to is let go of. But yeah, it's really spectacular what you're doing. And before we dive into the actual breathing exercise, I just want to say that you can find Hunter's all his information down below. His Instagram for the Breath of Fresh Air retreats, the It's in Your Head Instagram, and any other links that you want me to include below, please feel free.
Definitely.
And not only that, but if you have any specific resources that you like to push people towards, like whether it be books or other people's podcasts that people can just be like, just go into explore mode and dive into, you could leave those for me after or whatever, but you'll be able to, whoever's listening, be able to find them down below in the details. Yeah,
absolutely.
So so at this point, we've talked about how breath has changed your life. We've talked about how you've helped breath change other people's lives. Talked a little bit about how breath has changed my life. I would love to dive into this practice that Hunter has prepared for you, and is something that is very easy to begin with, just so that you can get a taste of what breath work can do for you, and just that first step under your belt.
Yeah, so this is something that's called like a resonant or coherent breath. So this is supposedly it's supposed to be the perfect breath. So it's a 5.5 second inhale, 5.5 second exhale, which makes about 5.5 seconds of, or 5.5 rounds of breath per minute. So this is something that has been practiced for thousands of years. And actually, if you look at almost every religion, any of their psalms, anything that they sing, a lot of meditation, all these different practices come to this same breath count, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Hindu, Buddhism, whatever it is, they all kind of have this same breath count around this like 6-second breath. And so what you're going to feel is this calm, connected, relaxed feeling. You might notice your heart rate slows down. You just feel a little more centered and grounded. This is something you can do at any point throughout the day. It's perfectly safe. I've done this where like I feel overwhelmed, and if there's a lot of stuff going on around me, I'm going to go to the bathroom for a second, and hopefully it's not too smelly in there, but you can sit and do this on your own, or just find a space away from everybody. Do it for a minute and two, calm yourself down and relax a little bit.
Right. There's just one piece I want to add right there is, like, we talked about this in my cognitive behavioral therapy video, and then the other video that I made on how breath, why it's the first step of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's because when you're saying you get overwhelmed and you just kind of go to separate yourself from that situation, breathing is creating a fork in the road where you can fall down that overwhelming, anxious feedback loop, fall into that rabbit hole, or you can choose to elevate yourself out of that overwhelm, take a step back from that situation that's causing you anxiety, and then have an entirely different set of eyes on what you're experiencing. And that is really one of the most, that's what I use most frequently in breathing in my day-to-day life, when I'm not doing like a meditative style breath work where I'm like, taking 20 minutes in the morning or taking 20 minutes in the afternoon to do it. The breathing is creating a fork in the road for you to come back to yourself and instead of getting lost in whatever type of triggered emotional reaction that you're having. So perhaps this breath that we're doing right now could be one that you use next time you get yourself caught up in a triggering, anxious experience.
Yeah, perfect. So if you're feeling anxious, stressed, if you are dealing with a difficult boss, with a family member, whatever it is, this is something you can do also in the moment, and no one's going to notice that you're doing it. There's other forms of breath work that is going to be a little more obvious that you're doing it. If you're doing even like a square breath where you're inhaling for 4 or 5 seconds, holding for 4 or 5 seconds, releasing for that same count,
Mm-hmm.
and then holding with an empty lung. Or you're doing like Nadi Shasana, like alternate nasal breathing. This is going to look pretty obvious if you're doing this and breathing. This is something you just connect with this breath. You're going to feel a little bit calmer, a little more relaxed immediately, a lot more centered.
Right.
And so for right now, if you want to try it, come to sit someplace where you feel comfortable, someplace where you're not going to be bothered, where you feel relaxed and safe. Sit with a straight spine. Almost feel like you have a piece of string coming from the top of your head and you're just dangling from there. Inhale, roll your shoulders up. Exhale to roll them down your back. And we're going to be breathing in and out through our nose entirely here. If that's not possible for you right now, you can use your mouth, but try to do it with your nose. First thing I want to do is just exhale and squeeze your navel to your spine. And then when you inhale, relax your belly and feel your belly press out in all directions, not just out to the front, but out the sides and out the back too. And this is how we're going to be breathing. So deep into our belly with every breath. Exhale, squeezing the belly down. It's going to be a nice, slow breath. And we'll start with the inhale through the nose, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slowly in through the nose, light and deep. Really just barely get in and exhaling it out. Slow exhale out through the nose. Inhale and slow. Just connecting with every detail you can, exhaling it out. Keeping the same rhythm as I talk. Feeling every detail that you can as that breath comes in, the cool air going in through your nose, going across the back of your throat, filling up your belly, expanding. And on that exhale, that gentle squeeze with your diaphragm and your belly, and that warmer air coming out across your upper lip. Just slowing it down. That slow count. In through the nose and out. In through the nose and out. Nice and slow. Feeling that breath going into every cavity, deep into your belly. And exhale, squeezing down that old stagnant air. And you might notice already, just after these few breaths, a little bit calmer, a little bit slower, a little more connected. Your mind might feel a little more clear, a little less anxious, a little less stressed. And this is perfect for any time of the day, anywhere that you are, of just reconnecting with this breath. If your mind is wandering, if you're stressed, if you feel overwhelmed, coming back to self, getting that connection with the mind and body, nice and slow, in through the nose, into the belly, and back out through the nose. And it doesn't take long to notice this. You can feel this calming effect, this relaxation. Your mind slowing down, your heart slowing down. Yeah, get some little yawns out. Perfect. And this is something that's available anytime throughout the day, anytime that you're feeling like you're going a little too fast, reconnecting with this breath, slowing down, keeping that 5 to 6 second count in and out, only through the nose. And you can start to blink your eyes back open and coming back into this space. How you feeling? Yeah, I'd say you slow down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, like in real time right now, I'm like, this is my first time doing an actual podcast / interview. So I'm a little tense. I'm like, all right, I want to make sure I'm performing well. And as soon as I got into the breath, it was like as if that person that was tense was in front of me, and I
Mm.
took a step back and got to witness it without all of the tensity.
It's perfect. I mean, that's
Yeah.
exactly that disconnect between your emotions are not who you are. That's not real. Just because you feel something and it feels so intense and you feel like you need to do something, it doesn't mean that that's true or real
Right.
always. And
Right.
getting that physical distance between your emotions and all that. And it's as simple as we're gonna do it for 30 seconds, a minute,
Yeah. Just
not
like
long at
10
all.
breaths, I felt relaxed already. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instantly calmer. And doing
Yeah.
those little check-ins throughout the day. So this is to show that you don't have to have this crazy deep Wim Hof screaming, crying, shaking,
Yeah.
practice. I love that. And that's wonderful. But this is something just connected with your breath. It's so powerful in and of itself that you can do
Yeah.
anytime, anywhere that you are. How powerful your breath, your lungs, that whole system is in connecting everything
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. And one thing to mention too is like with the tensity that, I was just feeling earlier, when you are tense like that or anxious, whatever it might be, you have a shallow chest breath. And so there's less oxygen getting to your prefrontal cortex and other parts of your body. So once you really do that deep belly breathing, it's like these systems come back online. I could think clear. We could, have a smoother conversation, the whole bit.
You're
Yeah.
also releasing nitric oxide. So breathing slowly through the nose, it releases this nitric oxide that's going deep in your belly. And when that comes back out, that's going to help to open up your nasal cavities. It's going to open up your vessels. It's literally going to get your body flowing better
Wow.
by
Okay.
releasing this. If you're breathing deep in through the mouth, you're releasing it out. Your body's not really using this natural gas that's within it that helps you to open up. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's
powerful. It connects
fascinating. It's
everything.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Hunt, I am extremely appreciative that you took the time out of your day to have this conversation with me. I
Yeah.
can't say that this is the only time that we're going to do this because I feel like there's
Yeah.
way too much information just like in a reserve somewhere that I'd love to tap into with you again. But like I said before, for anybody who's listening, you can check out all of his information below. And I think he might give me some resources as well to put below so that you can just experiment a little. You don't have to be a professional breath worker from the beginning. It's just like doing these simple practices like we just did to get your feet wet and to get comfortable with it. So yeah, thank you, man, so much.
And thank you so much. This is amazing. Yeah. I feel like I'm just getting to have a little conversation with you, which is always nice.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is nice. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so I will see you guys in the next video. If you guys would like to check out more of the cognitive behavioral therapy conversation, or just the first step in detail where we talk about breath work paired with visualization, all of those links will be included. And you'll see Hunter and I again very, very soon. Much
Yeah.
love,
Thank you
guys.
so much. Appreciate y'all.